morning, everybody. I have to say I'm pretty amazed that you're all out here on a late August Friday morning, not at the shore or trying to get out of work or whatever, so thanks for being here. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself, how I came up with the idea of Sunday suppers, what it is, its impact, and interwoven into that will be the whole concept of community, which I hope you'll get. So I am a native Philadelphian, grew up in Philly. And not to get too personal, but as I grew up, I never thought I really fit in. You know, I always felt kind of on the edge. From the age of 8, I started to cook. And cooking really gave me something. I mean, you know, you find kind of what you love or what you're really good at. And that was that for me. You know, I cooked from 8. I remember making a anniversary dinner for my parents out of the Julia Child cookbook when I was 11. I set up a restaurant in our kitchen on Sundays so that my family can order breakfast, and there were checks, and they had to pay for that too. The menu did change every week so we could give them something a little different. And what cooking really provided for me was a connection, right? A sense of being attached, of being appreciated, and also of competence, right? I felt like this was something I could do, that people like saw me in a specific way. I continued cooking. In high school, I had a business called People's Party. I'm a huge Joni Mitchell fan, and there's a song called People's Parties, and that's why I named it that. People thought it was a communist organization, but it really wasn't. And I went to college, but I dropped out after 2 years because really my passion was cooking, and I just kind of walked around to restaurants and said, please hire me, and I got a job doing kind of cold end, which is called garde-manger, in this very great restaurant way back in the 80s before, I'm sorry to say, many of you probably weren't born. But I did, and I learned everything there. You know, I knew how to cook, but I learned something about how restaurants run, how do you create food for a lot of people, and also using fresh ingredients, which is something that was always really important to me. So after I did that, I dropped out. I worked in restaurants for about 5 years. And it was great. It's not what it is now. There weren't really celebrity chefs. There was Julia Child and a couple others. But it was pretty hard work. I loved it. I loved that I was awake when everyone else wasn't. I was up 2, 3 o'clock in the morning with all the people that I worked with. And it was a community. You know, I felt very connected to the people I worked with. We spent a lot of time together and a lot of hard time together. It was, you know, I remember at the Garden there was like a galley kitchen with a cement floor, serving like 300 people, just standing for hours trying to get that food out. Then not that I got disillusioned, but cooking really didn't provide kind of a mind thing for me. Like it didn't provide me with like new ideas, things like that, and I decided to go back to school. Not an academic, school's really not for me. I'm the kind of person who like does better by doing. But I went back and I got a degree in sociology, whatever that means, and went into evaluation of, first, it was a cognitive work with kids, how to help them problem solve better, but then really got into nonprofits around health. So I was part of a team that looked at, when AIDS first got onto the world in early 80s, I guess, I was part of the team that created what we call standards of care. So when AIDS first started, right, nobody knew what it was, nobody knew how to treat it. So depending on where you went, you got a different treatment, right? So the idea of standards of care is to give everybody the same thing, regardless of where they go, and also regardless of how much money they have or where they live in the neighborhood, so they all got that. I worked at those kind of things for 25 years. Yes, I'm dating myself, because as I was turning 50, I was really good at this. You know, I really knew how to, I didn't actually provide direct services. What I did was I helped those people provide them better. So how do you measure what you're doing and if it has an impact? And if you don't have very much of an impact, how do you improve what you're doing to increase the way your services are impactful to the community, right? So as I said, as I was turning 50, I was kind of like, you know, I don't want to really do this anymore. You know, I like it, but it's not doing it for me. And in 2010, there was an article that came out in the Philly Enquirer. There was actually a series of articles written by Alfred Lubrano. And what they spoke to was hunger and poverty in Philadelphia. So from the article, I'm going to see if I can make this work. Hold on. See if this happens. From the article, I'm just going to talk about a little bit what the findings were and quote a few lines. At a time when more people in America are suffering from hunger, the 1st Congressional District, which is in Philadelphia, reaching from North Philly down to Chester, it's one of the hungriest, second only to the Bronx, okay? That's a congressional district. There's over 400 in the country. We were number 2. U.S. Census data that was released in September 2010 showed that the district, with a poverty rate of nearly 29% in 2009, is among the 10 poorest in the United States, the poorer and poorer than any other district in Pennsylvania. Childhood poverty was at 40% in 2009, the 8th worst of the America's 435 congressional districts. This is a picture of that was in the article. And I have to say what impacted me was not so much the numbers. I've lived in Philly all my life. I've worked with low-income communities in a lot of the nonprofit work I did. But if you read the stories of these women who were struggling to feed their children, who didn't eat so their children could eat, who were doing the best they could, but they could not afford to feed their children and find a place for them to live that was safe and have them go to school and get medical care and all those things. And they were tortured. They just felt inadequate and did not know what to do. So, too much. So of course, I worked mostly in healthcare. And so for me, one of the things that was really evident is that when you're hungry, when you don't have food, when you're food insecure, there's a lot of physical things that happen. I think you all know, like kids who don't have enough food, they don't do very well academically. Hard to focus, hard to really, there's some brain development that can be impacted from not having adequate nutrition. And adult and child diabetes prevalence rises because people that are hungry tend to eat high-calorie food. And what happens is when you get SNAP benefits, which are called food stamps, you use them, and by the end of the month, you don't have very much left. So you want to get as many calories, and it creates this kind of a little bit of a starvation pattern, so that when you have it, you just get as much as you can, and when you don't, you eat what you can. One woman, when we talked to her, we asked her about her SNAP benefits, and asked, what do you do when they run out? She goes, well, I mix some flour and water, and if I have anything else, I put it in, and that's what we eat until I get more benefits. So after I read this article, within 24 or 48 hours, I actually had a one-page description of what has become Sunday suppers. And what I tell people is that everything that I did in my life brought me to this, because I have this experience cooking, and then I also had this great experience doing program development and evaluation. I worked in very poor neighborhoods. I'm a native Philadelphian, so I felt like this was what I was meant to do. What Sunday suppers? One person described it when I explained to them beyond food access. So you guys know what food access is. If you're food insecure, a lot of people call it food deserts. They're not food deserts. There's food there. There's corner stores. There's little bodegas. So it's not a food desert. It's not like there's no food there. There's no healthy food. There's no fresh food within walking distance if you don't have a car or easy transportation. But there is food. So we move beyond that, and I'll explain how we do that. One of the centerpieces on Sunday suppers is a family meal. What I felt in reading these stories and in my experience was the focus should be on the family. Listen, everybody wants to fund programs that help kids. They're our future, right? What about their parents? You know, they're not just people to throw away. And if you're teaching those kids, they're going home to their parents who didn't learn what they learned. Those kids are not the decision makers. They're not the voices. So how does what those kids learn really get manifested, right? So my idea was, let's include the whole family. Community strength and leadership. I knew from early on that I was not like the community I was serving, okay? People are surprised, but I'm white, and I'm not from those neighborhoods. I didn't grow up with those kind of difficulties in my life. And while I have worked with folk like that a lot of my life, I will never have that experience. I will never truly know what that is. And my feeling is that communities have strengths within them. Those families that come, they have knowledge, they have experience, they have expertise. We have an opportunity to raise that up and raise them up so they can be the voices in the community. So they can teach their peers what they learn at Sunday suppers. They can be leaders. And we have a peer leadership program, jumping ahead of myself, of course, where we are actually training our community members to be staff members so that they can take over this program. And dignity and respect, you might say that goes without saying, but I don't know if you've ever been to a soup kitchen or a shelter, or if you've gone into a WIC office and tried to get services for your child who's 2 years old. But I will tell you that the families we serve don't often get treated with dignity and respect. And it's central to our mission to treat them as we would treat anyone else, because that's the right thing to do. So, first part of Sunday supper is family meals. Some of you may know that family meals have been shown to have positive impact on kids' academics, on family communication and connection, actually there's a research that shows teens delay risky behaviors if they have 4 or more family meals weekly. Why? Why do you think that is? Anyone? Accountability. Timing. You're sitting down together. You're connecting. So I want to ask you guys, when you were growing up, how many of you had family meals every day? Wow, that is impressive. Today, now, how many of you have family meals or sit with your community or your partner, whomever, every day? Okay, so the number went down. I'd say probably a third. And part of that, why? We're all busy, running around, nobody's on the same schedule. It's not a priority. For me, it was an avenue, it was the entree into bringing families together. A family is a community. These folk were not really having relationships with their kids. They were struggling, what can I start with? Crime, poverty, lack of health care, violence, a lot of domestic abuse. You guys read the papers, you know, right? So family meal can be kind of a haven if you let it. The other part, so our goal is to remove barriers so people can be successful. Successful in increasing their health and well-being through cooking differently, sharing meals differently, getting those skills. So we have workshops, hands-on workshops. This is not like I'm doing today, standing in front of a group and telling you. It's about them getting their hands in it, getting the skills so that they learn. It's a 5-month program. We're about behavior change. This isn't a feeding program. We feed people, but it's not a feeding program. We teach people, but it's not a nutrition education program. It's a program where we want people to get their hands in it, learn it, and feel like they can then do it on their own. Some of the key elements about our program are it's community-based. So I read that article. 5 months later, I was doing the program. I had $250 in the bank. And as I said, I'm not an academic. I'm also hate bureaucracy. So I did not go through the whole 501c3 thing that would have taken me forever. I didn't sit in an office reading articles and saying, well, here's the proper program that we should give to these people. It doesn't resonate for me. What I did is I went into the community and I asked them, I have this idea, what do you think? Like, will this work for you? Is this going to be like something that you would want to come to? And over, I would say, the first 2 years, that's how I learned. We had a basic framework, And it changed. And for some people, that was hard, people that work with me, because, it's like you're going this way and all of a sudden you're making a detour. But we're interviewing people now, and I say, in my mind, that will never stop. Because with the moment we stop being responsive to our community is the moment that we become that organization that decides what's good for those people. That's not what we're about. So there's hands-on things. We do nutrition messaging inside. We don't talk about milligrams and salt, all that kind of stuff. We talk about, why are greens better for you, right? Here's a healthier way to eat fried chicken. Everybody wants fried chicken. Well, if you eat it 4 times a week, here's a way to bake fried chicken, which we make and they love, right? And so instead of eating it 4 times a week, maybe half the time. We're not about good and bad. We're about, listen, change is hard for all of us. Sometimes I read these articles and I think, oh, people expect poor people to just get with the program. There's no understanding, like, change is hard for everyone. And listen, if you're like living in a cockroach-infested house with a kid who has ADHD and being abused, I think then change is a little bit harder. Just my opinion. We also do things like yoga, which they love, and other kind of meditation and stuff because folks are under stress, right? So, ironic that this is up here, right? So, to-go bags. Like I said, we try to remove all the barriers, right? So, okay, we give them a healthier meal. We teach them how do you do it. Then we give them the ingredients at the end of the night of the meal that they had. So if they had, for example, there's one here. So we had breaded chicken, I think that was. So we have like a kind of, oh, actually, no, it's chicken and rice. So this is brown rice. And we have one site which is primarily Latina, and brown rice is like, never had it, not that excited about it. Brown rice, chicken, all the herbs they need, etc. So they can take that home. The chef goes over with them. How do you make it? They make it at home, okay? Peer leadership, that was what I was talking about before. When you graduate from our program after 5 months, you can apply for a leadership position. Victoria, who's African American there, she was in charge of our garden and now is doing a lot of our recruitment for us. Heather, second from the left, was doing a lot of our workshops. And what our goal is to create, we're in the process of creating a curriculum. How do we support folks to really excel at what they're doing? How do we mentor them? How do we give them the right skills? Okay. So as I told you, I used to do evaluation. So of course, we do a baseline and we do a follow-up survey. And these are the things we measure. We measure other things, but primarily. So when people come in, we say, okay, in the last week, or generally, how often do you sit together as a family, have a meal? So the way that this works is that it's not actually percent. 44, they ate together on average 44% of the time, which works out to about, believe it or not, my math isn't good. But just to show you, they almost doubled that to 80%. So on average, they went from about 2.7 times a week to 5+ times a week. In terms of sugary drinks, we've all read about that, linked to obesity. They were able to cut that in half and conversely increase water. So we only serve water at Sunday suppers. We have a program called Rethink Your Drink, where we challenge them to set a goal and do something. It could mean not putting 6 sugars in my coffee. I have, people are always aghast at this, but with our first group, we had a Rethink Your Drink challenge. One mom was very quiet and withdrawn. And about the 3rd week, she said, I think I'd like to do something. And I said, well, what's up? She said, well, I drink a lot of soda. I said, okay, how much? A lot. She clearly was embarrassed. Finally, she told me she drinks a case of cans of soda a day. And I said, okay. I didn't do the eye roll, whatever. I just said, okay, well, what do you think you can do? Like half? She said, no, I want to try doing 4. 2 weeks later, she was down to 3 a day and had lost 12 pounds. It was her decision. I didn't tell her to do that. She'd made that decision on her own. Vegetable consumption, you can see that went up, and fruit consumption. Eating fried foods we use as a proxy for healthier cooking. So what we found, I just did an analysis last weekend. We went from, on average, people eating fried food 3 times a week to now it being 0.8. So that decreased. Okay. So the other thing, getting to our topic more directly, so I'm from the background of doing a lot of work in health, right? Worked in family planning, HIV and AIDS, other types of community health centers. So when I thought of this, I thought, well, here's the thing. If families are doing this, they're going to be healthier. That was really my whole thing, be healthier and have less of these chronic problems, etc. What we started to hear almost immediately was how people felt supported, how they felt like Sunday suppers is in my community. It really surprised me, not because it didn't make sense, but because that just wasn't the intention. And I had staff who helped educate me about why that was important, why it was happening, right? Our families, where am I on time? Good. Our families, when I talk about where I am, people say, well, what community are you in? We have 2 sites, one in Kensington, one in Germantown. But that's really a misnomer, because people are living in very isolated circumstances. The idea of multi-generational homes is not really happening. People are afraid to go out into the street. They're afraid to let their children go out in the street. They feel pretty isolated when they come in to our program. And we offer a sense of acceptance. Whatever's going on for you is fine. We're here today. We actually start every meal with everyone closing their eyes and breathing deeply 3 times. Hard for someone at the beginning, but by the 5th week, they're all in. Because the concept is, okay, let's leave all that outside and be present with each other, right? And, I have to tell you that it's very emotional for me, hearing some of the stories that our families tell about the impact that this program has had on them. I'm going to share with you, I think. Oh, okay. I don't remember what order I put these in, but this is a question we asked our families at the end. We say, if you were to describe Sunday suppers to someone, how would you describe it? So I just took that all. I'm very proud of myself. I'm old and not very technically savvy, but I learned about this word cloud thing. And so this is what they said. And I just was like, wow, they got it right. They really were on target. It's about family. That was the number one thing they said, about being healthier, about people, about connection, and about community. So now I think these are some of the quotes that our families have said. This is Hafiza. She just graduated. It's a community. You meet new people and have fun. So this woman is a single mom of 6 children under the age of 10. She's a victim of domestic violence. Some of her kids are experiencing PTSD as a result of it. And look at her. She looks so happy. And I'll tell you, her kids were a handful, man. They were hard to keep in their seats and hard to do whatever, but she told us that they rearranged their whole downstairs so that they could put a table there, so that they can have family meals, and the kids now help set the table and help her with making it, and it's wonderful. She loves it. This is a family that just graduated. It's a different learning experience in every sense: food, health, family, and fun. This is Latiti. I don't have to read it for you, but she's there with her daughter and her grandson, actually. So we have families. Families are how they describe their families. So it could be a grandparent with their grandkids. However they describe a family is how they do it. She lived right across from the school we were at, and he was the pickiest eater ever. But you'll see, these kids, they start out, they're not going to try anything. 2 rules at Sunday suppers. One is no electronics are allowed. Put your phone away. You can do it, really, for 45 minutes while you're sitting with your family. Second one is you have to try everything. And sometimes, it's actually the adults who have more problems than the kids. But I have had kids who I have said, you can spit that in my hand if you do not like it. And maybe that happened once. But more likely than not, what happens is they try it, and they take more on their plate. And then they say, when are we having broccoli soup again? Kids who their parents said they will not eat vegetables. They will not do that. It does take a while. I mean, if you're not used to that, we have what we call conversation starters on the table. If you're not used to sitting around and talking with people, it's hard even to have the conversation. So we have conversations like, would you rather fly or be invisible, right? That doesn't require any age level. Anybody can answer that question. And what you see, it's pretty miraculous. I remember this one family, it was a woman and the father of the child and the three of them, and they came in that first time and they were like this the entire time. They just were no eye contact. By week 3, they were talking to each other. It's a little thing, but for me, I know you guys might think I'm crazy, but I think that's kind of miraculous. That they went from like not knowing how to even have a conversation, and I don't know what they were talking about, but they were talking. I love this picture of Iris. Iris is one of our peer leaders, and those are her 2 grandchildren who she bought, and she told us she came because her granddaughter really liked to cook, and so that's what bought her. So this story, I just want to tell you this because I just love it. So the woman who works for me, her name's Jackie Saez. She's our program manager, and she's the one who really has the most connection with the community. It is kind of a very intentional desire for me to hire people who represent the community we serve. So she was calling the woman on the right, about something. I had asked her something, can you ask her this? Rosa. So she called her and she said, oh, I'm out shopping. I'm at the ShopRite with Eva Lease, who was graduated with her. They are now in touch with each other daily. One has a car, one doesn't. One is going through struggles, one isn't. Their kids went to the same school. They've seen each other. They never talked to each other. And at Sunday suppers, they connected. They are now a support system for each other. I mean, we called them out of the blue, and there they are together. And we said, oh, will you snap us a picture of you guys? And so they did. So I think, yeah. So the next thing, I'm talking, you're tired of hearing me talk. This is a video that we just had made, just got done. Give you a sense of what it is we do.
It's a wonderful program to be a part of. It wasn't just somebody handing you a plate of food. It was coming in the door, being embraced, somebody teaching you how to do it. It was someone telling you about the food and where it comes from and how it would affect your body.
Maybe I don't have to have ribs every holiday. Maybe it's just like a small side dish.
Food is a universal. Everyone eats, right? Sunday Suppers is a program where we try and help families live healthier lives. We work with poor families who want to make changes in the way they eat, what they eat, and how they prepare it. And we want to provide to them all the support they need in order to do that. Sunday Supper's core is the family meal that's served family style around a table. It's set up very similar to a restaurant. Then we have about 45-minute workshop, mostly cooking, but also things around budgeting and label reading. We have a gardening component. We have a to-go bag, which has in it all the ingredients a family needs in order to replicate at least one element of the meal that they had that evening. A lot of people in our neighborhoods, they don't have the kitchen equipment they need to make healthy food. And so we provide them with plates and glasses, pots and pans, knives and cutting boards, whatever they need in their kitchen to prepare healthy meals.
It was really important for me to learn how to eat better so that my diabetes could be better. I have high cholesterol, I have high blood pressure, and having my daughter with me and her seeing the change in me, and since she wants to be like mommy when she grows up, maybe I can make her life longer by the better choices that I make now.
Regardless of where you live or what your income is or who you are, everyone should be entitled to healthy, fresh food. People that participate in this program are making huge changes, going from drinking soda about 2/3 of the time to drinking water 2/3 of the time. They're eating twice as many vegetables. They're coming together and sitting around the table much more often. They feel closer as a family, they communicate more as a family, and they cook together as a family. It works. So there you go. That's what we do.